Paul Mainieri, of course, was LSU's head baseball coach from 2007 through 2021. He's nice enough to have us in his beautiful home here. Coach, it is great seeing you. Thanks for having us.
Great to see you, Jacques. Great to see you. Great to be with you again.
First off, you look good. I know you were you had so many problems with your neck and pain and whatnot, so I hope you're doing better health-wise.
Well, I'm feeling much better, to be honest with you, Jacques. I don't have the migraine headaches at all anymore, and my neck actually feels pretty good when I'm staying active, when I'm out on the golf course and so forth. It's when I'm just sitting around doing nothing when my neck starts to bother me. So I try to stay as active as I can, but I am a much more relaxed, as I was telling you before we went on the air. My toughest decisions these days are whether to hit a 6 or 7 iron, not whether I should take the pitcher out or leave him in.
And breaking news, Coach Mainieri had a hole-in-one the other day, right?
That's called a blind squirrel finding an acorn, believe me. It was pure luck. My goal when I started playing golf this summer was to take my game from horrible to mediocre. I think I've accomplished it. I'm now very mediocre at the game of golf, but I did have a lucky shot at University Club the other day, 131 yards, 9 iron, and the 3 guys that I was playing with, they got pretty excited. I was still mad at myself for missing the putt on the hole before.
Well, there it goes back to coaching again, right? Do something great, but the time it got away from me or whatever. But your first head coaching job was in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. So every day you've been getting out of bed as far as professionally, and baseball has been the thing that's been propelling you through the day, and now you're not doing it. Tell me about the adjustment.
It's a big adjustment, Jacques. For 4 decades as a head coach in college, it's been my routine. You know, this time of year, well, beginning in the fall, really, you know, my job was to take a big pile of clay and mold it into something beautiful. And I loved that. I loved working with the players. I loved molding a team, getting a team prepared and see them improve as the year goes on and strive for championships. And that's been taken away now, you know, in my life. So it's been a big adjustment. I can't lie about that. There's days when I lay around and I'm almost in tears because I miss what I've done for so long. But then it doesn't, you know, those feelings don't last very long because I then start to just feel very grateful, thankful, appreciative of the opportunities that I've had. I feel somewhat proud about the accomplishments that we've had, you know, wins and losses, championships, and those kinds of things, but mostly because of the way that the players that were under my care have evolved and developed into outstanding citizens. And, you know, I miss it, but at the same time, I'm very grateful that I had the opportunities that I had.
Well, you mentioned outstanding citizens. I thought that one thing that always emanated from you leading that program through the big successes and the World Series trips and the national championship and the national runner-up was class. It was a classy organization. You never heard of players getting in trouble off the field, and talking to the Buzzy Heidells and the Nick Pontiffs and all the guys over the years, they said Coach would come to class and he would check to see if we're going to class, and he would make sure that we carried ourselves the right way.
Jacques, it was always important to win, and I make no apologies for wanting to win, but I wanted to win for a couple of reasons. You know, number one, obviously I wanted to be able to keep my job, and I couldn't help youngsters develop if I didn't have my job, and you know, there's a certain standard you had to meet. Secondly, there was a community that wanted to see our team be successful, and that was a very big motivation for me. But the biggest reason I wanted to be successful and win on the field was because of then I felt I could influence the young people in developing them into winners in the game of life. If I told you, Jacques, if you do something this way, you'll be successful, and then you do it that way and you're successful and our team wins, now I have credibility with the players. So now I can teach them the life lessons that I really felt was the most important part of my job, is to preparing youngsters for life after LSU, after college, so that they could go on and be good fathers, good husbands, successful people in whatever walk of life that they wanted to be. So it was important, I thought, that while they were playing for us in college, that they understood discipline and they understood hard work. I used to tell every team, listen, we're not looking for shortcuts. We're not going to look for the easy way to do things. We're going to purposely search out the hard way to do things so that when we hold that trophy up at the end of the year, we will know we did it the right way, and we'll be very proud of that. And sure enough, the players would tell me years later that there were times when they would not feel so pleased about my demands on their discipline and way that to do things the right way in every walk of their life and every aspect of their life. But later on, they understood why I was doing that with them. And that was the joy that I really got from coaching.
Yeah, and talking about your resume, it'll say 15 years, but as I've told Skip Bertman, I said, I don't care if you're coaching, Demi Mainieri, your great father, Tommy Lasorda, no one's going to the College World Series in 2007 with the first team that you inherited. You know, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but Blair Barbier, you know, who is, you look up LSU baseball player in the dictionary, there's a picture of Blair Barbier.
Right.
I think he told somebody, through all the great successes at LSU, the greatest accomplishment in LSU baseball history is the 2007 Tigers winning 29 games.
He told you that?
I heard that
Well,
somewhere.
Well, you know, it's a delicate thing for me to talk about because I don't want in any way to make it, you know, any disparaging remarks about the previous staff. But we had our challenges that first year, Jacques. You know, hey, listen, the previous staff before me, they recruited Blake Dean, they recruited Sean Ochenko, they recruited Ryan Schimpf, they recruited Jared Mitchell. Right. You know, those 4 freshmen I inherited. And, you know, we worked hard with them, of course, but Lewis Coleman was already on the team, and Jared Bradford actually was one of the recruits. Mike Hollander was on the team, Buzzy Heidel, and Chris McGee, and so forth. So there was a foundation there that I thought could help us develop the program. Now there was some other guys on the team that didn't want the discipline and they didn't want to do things the way that I thought you had to do them in order to be successful. So there was a little bit of an evolution. Fortunately, our coaching staff, Terry Rooney and Cliff Godwin, went out and we recruited the #1 recruiting class in the country in our first year. Guys like DJ LeMahieu and Anthony Renato and Micah Gibbs and Leon Landry and so forth down the line. And the next year, our second year, the combination of that foundation of guys along with that first recruiting class, you know, we were able to go to Omaha in 2008, my second year. It wasn't without its challenges. It took a while for us to get going, but then you might remember we had that 23-game winning streak towards the end of the year, and it vaulted us to Omaha. And then, of course, we moved into the new stadium in my third year and won the national championship with a pretty veteran team.
Yeah, I'll always remember 2008. That's a year where it's like, wow, I'm getting paid to do this, you know, to go to ballparks on pretty spring days and watch this team win 23 games in a row through the heart of the SEC schedule. This wasn't the beginning of the year when you played lesser opponents and whatnot. And just the crazy games that took place during that winning streak. That SEC tournament, which you can recount like a computer, but that first game against South Carolina where you're dead in the water, or it appeared you were, and came back and won, you know.
Well, through 8 innings of that first game in Hoover, their pitcher was a kid named Sam Dyson, who went on to pitch in the big leagues for many years, became the closer of the Texas Rangers. He had not pitched in an SEC game the entire year, so we had no information on him. And then he's out there throwing 96 miles an hour. And they, fortunately for us, they took him out after 8 innings and they brought in these left-handed pitchers. We were a very left-handed hitting dominant lineup. But Matt Clark hit a big 3-run homer. And then we got very fortunate when Ryan Schimpf blooped one down the line and DJ LeMahieu hustled all the way from first base to score the tying run. And then, of course, Blake Dean hit the walk-off home run in extra innings. And we ended up sweeping through that SEC tournament. I'll tell you, that was, I mean, you hate to say you have favorite teams, but that was the team, Jacques, that really turned LSU baseball back in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And I knew we could do it. When we met with that team the first day of classes in late August, we had, you know, finished way down in the standings a year before in my first year. Yeah. And we obviously hadn't played a game yet in my second year. And I stood before that team and I told them the 2008 team will be the team that will forever be remembered as a team that got LSU baseball back on the right track and made us a national contender every year. And you know, we got off to a rough start after 40 games. We were in 11th place out of 12
6,
teams.
11, and 1 in the SEC.
Boy, you have a great memory. I was hoping you didn't remember that. But then we swept our last 4 series in the SEC, including 2 of them on the road. You know, in all the years of great history of LSU baseball, that has never been done except for in 2008, 4 consecutive sweeps in the SEC. But we won all those games, plus we won all the midweek games. Then we swept the SEC tournament, and then we swept the regional. And not until the first game against Irvine in the last weekend in the old box, we got beat. Remember, there was a hidden ball trick that was very influential in the game. Yeah. We came back and won the next 2 games. The second game was in a grand fashion in the come from behind.
Here's my nerdy self again. Was it 5-2 you were losing? 6-2, something like that, late in the game?
We were losing 5-2 going into the 8th inning. Jared Mitchell hit a home run in the 8th inning to make it 5-3. We went to the 9th losing 5-3, and we scored 5 runs in the top of the 9th inning. Ochenko drove in Dean drove in the tying run. Ochenko drove in the go-ahead run. LeMahieu added a run with a sacrifice fly. Lewis Coleman shut him out in the bottom of the 9th inning. Mitchell had made a great catch in left field, and we won that game. And then the next night we beat him big. We hit 7 home runs and blew him out and closed up the old box in the most appropriate way.
I remember that so well. It was a Monday night, the final game of the old Alec Box Stadium. Our news staff said, "Jacques, you're going live at 6." I said, "The game starts at 6." They said, "Jacques, you're going live at 6." And staying outside the stadium, and I could just hear it roaring behind me. I heard one roar, then I heard another roar, then I heard another roar.
Oh!
And the first inning, you hit 3 home runs in a row, right?
Back-to-back home runs. First Blake hit a 2-run homer. Micah Gibbs batting cleanup, hit one opposite field, and then Matt Clark came up and just hit a mammoth pop-up that the wind just blew it over the bleachers in left field. And the place, I really thought the old stadium was going to come crumbling down because of the noise. That was the loudest I've ever heard a college baseball stadium. Yeah. And we went on to hit 7 home runs. Of course, Buzzy Heidel hit the last home run in old Alec Box Stadium, which he never fails to remind me of every time I see him. And it was a great victory. We went on to Omaha, and although we went 1-2 in Omaha, it really set the stage for the next year when we started the season, preseason #1, and culminated it with the national championship.
Yeah, I've talked to Blake Dean in the past, and he's talked about 2009. Look, we understand what 2009 is, but he said, 2008, man, might have been, the time of my life. I had so much fun.
Let me tell you, Blake Dean, for probably a 6-week stretch at the end of that season, Jacques, he had more clutch hits, clutch home runs, walk-off home runs, game-tying hits. Remember the grand slam he hit against Alabama in Hoover when the score was tied in the 8th inning? I've never seen a player get more big hits over a period of time as Blake Dean did in 2008. He was unconscious. Bases loaded double against Southern Miss in the championship game of the regional. He tomahawked a high fastball into right center field. I mean, he was just unbelievable down the stretch as our leader.
I used to joke with him too. His picture would pop up on the Jumbotron, and he wasn't smiling or anything. He just had this look, like a killer, like a guy at the plate who was just hammering that baseball. That's what he did.
I've been so fortunate, so lucky to have coached so many great players through the years here at LSU, and even before I came to LSU. And when people look at my record or wins and losses or championships or whatever, it wasn't me, Jacques. It was the players. As I've told people many times, in 40 years of coaching, 39 years of coaching, I never once pitched a ball. I never once caught a ball. I never once hit a ball or ran the bases. It was all the players and what they did out there on the field. My job was to select the right players, put them in the right positions, motivate them, inspire them, make them believe that they could do anything they put their mind to it, and then have some strategy during the games.
And real quick, I'm so glad that you got a chance to experience the old box at its peak too. I mean, the new box had to have been built. That's progress. That's what has to be done, and it's a gorgeous place. Everyone knows what the new box is. But the fan noise in the old box, it was so concentrated. The people were so close to the action. I mean, Skip's told stories where he was screaming at the top of his lungs, and the first baseman couldn't hear him because it was so loud and whatnot.
Oh, I experienced that a lot. And even the new box, there were nights where you felt like it was shaking. It was so loud, Jacques. And when Bill Franquez would play calling Baton Rouge, whenever a new pitcher would come into the game for the other team, you could literally see that kid shaking out there on the mound. You know, there's no place in college baseball. I don't care, you know, what these other places say. LSU was the premier program in terms of fans coming, getting involved in the game. Skip taught fans the game early, you know, in the 80s, and it's been passed to the new fans. And they're so much a part of the games, the experience of college baseball at LSU or any place in college baseball. And it was just a wonderful privilege to be the head baseball coach for 15 years here. I sometimes think that any moment now my mother is going to wake me up and shake me and tell me it's time to go to school. Like everything was just one big dream for me for these last 15 years. The regionals seem like such a blur to me because, you know, when we won 9 regionals in my time, but you didn't feel like you accomplished anything because you had to win the super regional, you know. So in my mind, so much those regionals were just a blur, although some of them were really testing. I remember the Baylor game in the winners bracket when Anthony Renato struck out 14 and we won in extra innings when Austin Nola, as a freshman that I had inserted during the course of the year to move LeMahieu to second base, and Nola got the big hit. That was a very monumental time. Maybe the regional game I remember the most, and I'm sure most fans don't even remember it, is when we played Sam Houston State in the winners bracket game with Aaron Nola on the mound. And Aaron threw 42 pitches in the first inning. It was a hot, muggy night, and we made 3 infield errors on the left side. Ibarra, who never made an error, Bregman, who never made an error. They made 3 errors between them. He had given up 5 runs, and the bases were loaded with 2 outs, and a boy hit a line drive, and Andrew Stevenson made a diving catch in left center field to end the inning. I had Nate Fury warmed up in the pen. He was coming in the next pitch, the next batter.
Yeah.
Nola ended up going the next 6 innings and threw 60 pitches total, got us through 7 innings. We rallied, ended up winning that critical game, beat UL Lafayette the next day to win the regional. That was maybe the toughest game that we ever had in a regional against Sam Houston State.
Well, I remember this, 2009, your team that, you know, mowed through everyone. Southern Jaguars, first game, right?
Oh, wow.
Were you losing 2-0?
We were after 2 batters of the game, we were losing 2-0. I was reminiscing with this with Roger Cator just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, Paul.
Oh, hey. Austin Ross walked the first batter. The next batter hit a 2-run bomb. I mean, a blast over the right field fence. And then they had a left-handed pitcher named Chase Richard who was just carving us up for 6 innings. We couldn't do anything. The score was 2-0. Ryan Schimpf's on second base with 2 outs, and Southern had a great catcher by the name of Thomas. Well, he had a cannon of an arm. And I just said, we got to try to make something happen. So Schimpf has given me a signal that he can get a jump at second base, so I gave him the green light. My signal for a green light to the runner was just to open my mouth like that, right? So Schimpf sees it, he takes off for third, Thomas throws the ball into left field, and that's our first run of the game. In the 7th inning, Paul Bertassini had to strike out their batter with the bases loaded and 2 outs to keep the game at us behind 2-1. And then in the bottom of the 7th, Austin Nola got a 2-out hit to tie the game, and we ended up scoring an additional, I think, 6 or 7 runs in the inning. After the game, do you remember Ryan Schimpf was being interviewed in the post-game press conference, and he says, well, Coach Mainieri gave me the open mouth, and so I took off. And I said, well, I guess we'll have to have a new signal tomorrow for stealing third base.
Oh, man, that's awesome. Just goes to show you, right? I mean, Southern's going to play LSU in football this year. We don't know what's going to happen, but in baseball, things like that can happen. It can be close like that. Southern
had a great team. We knew it. Yeah. And everybody, of course, expected us to win the game, the 4 seed against the 1 seed. And our team goes on to win the national championship. And we could have been derailed in that first game by those guys because they played their hearts out. But we found a way to win, and then we went on to, of course, win the regional and won the super regional, and went out and had our finest moment in the finals against Texas.
There's so much I want to talk to you about. I mean, we could talk an hour, 2 hours on just 08, 09 and whatnot. And in 2009, you've done so many interviews and talked about that. And but just your thoughts on that team. I mean, it's so amazing looking back at the roster and the guys that were on that team now and how they've gone on to the pros and had great careers.
The 2009 team?
2009, yeah.
Yeah, I think we had 6 guys make it to the major leagues off of that team. And, my very good friend Jim Hendry, who at that time was the general manager of the Chicago Cubs, came down at the beginning of the season, the preseason, and he was going to give this speech at the first pitch dinner, to be the keynote speaker. So he came in a day early and watched us practice. And he came over to me at practice and he says, "Dude, this is the best collection of position players I've seen in the last 20 years in college baseball." I looked at him and I said, "Are you serious?" And he says, "You have a great team. There's no doubt in my mind about it." But when you're coaching your team every day, like, you believe in your players, but you also see their imperfections. So you don't really know how it stacks up against all the other teams out there. I realized as the years piled on and I gained more experience that no team out there is perfect. You think somebody out there has the perfect team, but they don't. But that team was outstanding. Not only did we have talented players, Jacques, but we had great leadership on the team. Guys like Buzzy Heidel and Chris McGee, Ryan Bird, Nolan Cain, Paul Bertassini, these weren't the headline players, but they were the leaders of our team.
Yeah.
And then we had great talent that also played with great leadership as well. Yeah. But that team just had a confidence about themselves that they were going to find a way to beat you. And fortunately, we found that way. It wasn't as easy as people think it was. I'll tell you that. I remember having dinner with Nolan Cain the summer after we won the national championship, and he said to me, "Coach, everybody I talk to tells me we made it look so easy. It didn't seem easy to me. Was it easy?" And I said, "No, it wasn't. The championship game was tied 4-4 going into the 6th inning, which means we were playing a 4-inning game for the national championship. But we had that big top of the 7th inning or top of the 6th inning, and we were able to tack on. We had great relief performances from Chad Jones and Lewis Coleman, and we went on to win the championship."
Well, and these days, this transfer portal has become such a big topic, and certainly LSU's benefited getting Jacob Berry, and we see in women's basketball, Kim Mulkey's got Alexis Morris doing well, and then Brian Kelly, the new football coach, is certainly tapping into it. But what if Lewis Coleman quits?
Yeah.
Or goes somewhere else?
Sure.
What if Nick Pontiff says, "I'm not playing a whole lot, I'm going to go somewhere else"? What if Buzzy Heidel wants to go play in the Southland Conference or something like that? And they're not part of that.
Right.
Those are the kind of things that I think the Ben McDonald's and the people of the world aren't sounding like old fogies or whatnot.
Yeah.
They're talking about commitment, sticking things out, and you may be part of something that you can't see today.
Well, Jacques, I have my personal feelings about these things, the transfer portal, the NIL. It's not college athletics as I was raised in college athletics, of course. I've always been a very big critic of the fact that there's only 11.7 scholarships in baseball. So I don't really have a huge problem with those players augmenting their scholarships and supplementing their scholarships in some way. The transfer portal, like you said, is something that most people think if a player is disgruntled, they're going to just jump ship because the grass is greener somewhere else. But I think what you're seeing in football too is guys that are very good players, established players that now have a resume of success are kind of putting themselves out there to the highest bidder. And it's kind of unbridled free agency. And I could see that even happening with college baseball. I mean, I'm hearing of schools that are giving each player $10,000 on the team. So what happens if, I'm not going to mention a name of an LSU player, but what happens if a player comes to LSU and has a great season and, he's going to have a tremendous career, and then another school comes in and says, "Hey, we can give you $50,000 or $100,000. Is that boy going to show a loyalty to LSU, or is he going to leave for greener pastures financially?" So all those things are a concern of mine, and it's been a concern of mine for the last couple years when different things started to happen and you could see where everything was going, what direction it was going. Hopefully, somehow the universities and the NCAA and Congress and everybody else will be able to put their arms around it and bring it under some degree of control. I do think schools like LSU probably benefit more than a mid-major school do, but let me put it this way: I'm kind of glad I'm not dealing with it. I've made a lot of adaptations over the course of 4 decades, as you might imagine. This would have been a really difficult adaptation for me.
Well, I was going to ask this question at some point, but I guess now that I'll bring it up, do you ever see yourself coaching again?
I don't know, Jacques. Right now I don't, honestly, but you never say never. I'm 64 years old. I thought I was going to coach until I was 67. I just, physically and a lot of things just piled up to make it a very complicated thing for me, and I just felt like it was the right time to step away for me personally and for the program. I think Jay's going to do a really great job. He's got young, youthful enthusiasm. He knows how to handle the transfer portal and the NIL and all of those kinds of things, whereas I was just not ready to deal with all of that mentally. So yeah. Right now I'm enjoying playing golf. I'm enjoying doing ambassador role things. I'm enjoying my grandchildren and my children. I enjoy the freedom to be able to go visit friends and do some stuff, but I do miss it too. I mean, it was my whole life, really. So I can't predict what would happen in the future. I really can't see myself going back into coaching. I think I've probably given it all I have, and I just, where else would you want to coach but LSU?
Yeah.
I mean, I had the best job in the country, and I voluntarily gave it up. So where else do you go?
Yeah, it just crossed my mind, just if ever it's about, you've been on Broadway, so to speak. You've been under the bright lights. If it was ever about, hey, I just want to get in the dugout again and impact people's lives, where they're not expecting me to go to Omaha and everything and have some fun coaching baseball again. So,
I'm not at that point right now. I can assure you of that, and I don't know that I ever will be. So I try not to think too much about it.
There's this guy named Greg McMahon who was on the LSU football coaching staff. Yeah,
Greg's a friend.
Yeah, coach special teams, and I've had a chance to get to know him. And he, when he was coaching, just like the meanest, toughest guy in the world. Off the field, just sweetest guy.
Sure.
And he said he retired, I think his second or third, well, he's not retired, but just out of coaching for the moment. Second or third day, his wife looks at him, you're not going to stand here all day, are you? I mean, and so there's always those adjustments, right, for lots of different people. So anyway, well, I'm glad you're having a good time and enjoying yourself. And
I don't have to ask for permission to go play golf. My wife is really, my wife wakes up in the morning and says, you are going to play golf today, aren't you? I think she'd be more disappointed than I if I didn't.
Well, I see her exercising at the gym I go to, so you guys are all staying busy, and that's great. And just some other memories too. I mean, just going down the line, I just want to say 2013, when you played that super regional against Oklahoma, that was like the essence of college baseball.
Wasn't it?
Big time college baseball. When you got Aaron Nola going up against Jonathan Gray.
What a great game that was.
Yeah, it was just amazing. And just to think that, some people think you fall out of bed and go to Omaha and whatnot. I mean, these are wars to make it.
Listen, there was a 0-0 game in the 5th inning, and they led off with a double and bunted him over to third base, and then Nola struck out the next 2 batters to get us out of the 5th inning. And in the 8th inning, Jacoby Jones tripled to drive in the first run of the game. Tyler Moore came off the bench, pinch hit, and drilled a base hit to score Jacoby. And Nola pitched a complete game, 2-0 victory for us. That was one of the best games ever that I've enjoyed as far as being a coach. But I'm sure most people don't even remember that game, Jacques. You do, because sometimes we as coaches, as fans, as media people, we only think about the final result of a season. Did he win the national championship or did they not win the national championship? But when you go back and you replay it and talk about it like we're talking about it, you realize there were so many special moments throughout the time that, for any coach. But when I think of my 15 years, If I had to write out the 100 best moments that I experienced as the baseball coach at LSU over 15 years, I'd have a tough time narrowing it down to 100, because there were so many special big games that we got the job done and we won them, and it vaulted us to the next step.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, too many people just remember that, you got to the finals and you lost 2 close games to Florida. The games could have, changed so quickly, and we could have had another national championship. You mentioned 2013. We go to Omaha with a 57-9 record. We already had the SEC and LSU record for wins in a season. And we play UCLA. It's the first time we're playing in that new ballpark. We hit 4 balls that I thought were going to be home runs. They would have been home runs in any park in the SEC. One of them went out, Katz's home run, and 3 of them were caught at the warning track, 2 by Ibarra and 1 by Andrew Stevenson. Yeah. And we ended up losing to UCLA 2-1. Yeah. And then we play North Carolina, who's the #1 overall seed, and we have to play them an elimination game, and we're losing by a run in the 8th inning, and we have the bases loaded with Mark Laird up. If Mark Laird dribbles a little ground ball single through the infield, we win that game, and maybe we come back and win the championship. But instead, he flew out, and we end up losing a 1-run game to North Carolina, and we're home in 2 games. How do those things happen? And sometimes you think back, and you're so frustrated because But like we were talking before we went on camera, Jacques, as coaches, we're like the fans too, maybe more so. No matter what you've accomplished, it never feels like enough. There was always those games that got away, that if we'd have won those games, like I was sitting with my son Tommy a few months ago, and I said, man, Tommy, I wish we would have just won that championship in 17. And he looked at me and he said, Dad, if we'd have won in 17, you'd be sitting here saying, if only we'd have won in 13 also, or if only we'd have won in 15, or if only we'd have won in 19. It's never enough. And that's why I have to fight myself on thinking about those negative games, those negative moments where the games got away from us, and just sit back and realize just how lucky and fortunate that I was to have got to do what I wanted to do for a lifetime, coach so many wonderful players, have so many special moments and success, and I have to fight myself to dwell on that instead of the ones that got away.
Well, Sean Payton, for example, just retired for the moment. I remember his first year in 06, Saints won today. Oh my God, they won. They won again. Oh, we're going to make the playoffs. Oh, we're going to win a playoff game. And by the end of his regime, we didn't get that #1 seed.
Yeah.
We didn't. We didn't make it to the Super Bowl, and you get jaded. I mean, you really do. You can. And I think we've lived through the. Football-wise and baseball-wise and everything, we've been alive for the greatest moments in Louisiana sports history here.
Well, when we were talking again before we went on camera, Nick Saban's won how many national championships?
I think we decided 7, unfortunately, 6 at Alabama, 1 at LSU.
Yeah, but he's lost 3 national championship games. And I'll guarantee you, if Nick Saban was honest with you, if you talked to him about it, he'd probably tell you that those 3 losses in the championship game he thinks about much more often than he does the 7 that he won. That's just the nature of coaching. You want to win every game. You feel like you were in a position to win every game, but it just didn't happen for whether you didn't make the plays or you had bad breaks or whatever the reason was. And but Jacques, the nature of sports is that somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. If you win the good majority of your games, which fortunately in my career we did, you're able to coach for 40 years and you get to leave on your own terms. For the coaches that didn't get the breaks or didn't make the decisions that allowed them to win the majority of their games, they didn't get to finish the way that they wanted to. So again, I feel just so blessed, so fortunate. I loved every second of my time as being the LSU baseball coach. It was the most difficult decision I've ever made in my life to step away from it. But everything has to come to an end at some point. Yeah. And I realized that. So I accepted it. This was probably the right time for me.
Yeah, and life has its challenges, and certainly you're living in this beautiful house and you got a beautiful family and all that. And But the last couple of years, there were challenges. You had the COVID that comes in and cancels the season. Your father passes away.
Tommy Lasorda passed away.
Tommy Lasorda wasn't just a celebrity. Obviously, he was a friend to your family and to your dad and everything.
Well, I can't lie to you. The external circumstances of the last couple of years took their toll on me. When I lost my father, it took a part of me away. And then when the pandemic hit, I couldn't coach the way that I was used to coaching. I loved the one-on-one meetings with players in my office where I could lean over and hit my desk and make facial expressions and know that I was getting into the heart and soul of that player to make him believe that he could do things. Well, now our meetings, we're wearing a mask, you're 10 feet away, you have very few of those meetings. Last year, team meetings, we had very few team meetings. When we had them, we'd sit in the stands with 4 seats in between each guy. And I'd virtually be talking on a microphone to my own team. It's pretty hard to get into their soul and get into being able to affect the psyche of the players when everything seems so cold, and calculated. And it was just different for me. I didn't like doing it that way. Fortunately, we fought through it and we got to a regional. We won the regional in Oregon, which was a great accomplishment. We finished 13th in the country, which is nothing to be ashamed of. But it wasn't as much fun for me personally because my view of coaching, Jacques, was always, yes, we want to win, as I told you before, but it was impacting young people's lives and teaching them how to be successful. And I felt like because of the circumstances, some personal issues with my health, with losing my father and Tommy, the pandemic, it just kind of, the changing rules of college sports, everything just kind of piled up together at one time. And I just felt like maybe it was God's way of telling me it was time.
And I talked to you before we came on camera. I said it felt a little abrupt to me that you didn't get like a retirement tour or, when you go to different places, they give you gifts or whatnot. You weren't really interested in that.
That's not me, Jacques, to be honest with you. As the head coach at LSU, you're a lightning rod and you're going to get some credit and you're going to get a lot of criticism. And I understood that was it, okay? But I've had my day in the sun, I've had so many wonderful things happen to me. The last thing I needed was a full year of all the attention being on me. Oh, he's taking his victory tour around the league and they're giving you rocking chairs or fishing rods or whatever. It would have been very embarrassing to me to do that. I'm not knocking anybody else for doing that. Yeah. Coach K, announced before the year it was going to be his last year and so forth. I don't knock anybody for doing it. That's not me. I always wanted the attention to be on the players as much as possible. I didn't make the final decision that I was retiring until the night before. I texted Scott Woodward in the morning and met with him that afternoon, which was the day before we had the press conference. Even my wife didn't know that I was going to retire. And, I feel a little bit bad about it because of my family. I think my family probably would have enjoyed, the end of the season knowing that this was the last games that we were going to be in Alec Box Stadium as the first family, so to speak, of LSU baseball. And I feel a little bit bad about that I've cheated my wife and my kids out of that, but I think they're going to have me throw out the first pitch on opening night, and it'll kind of be my way to say goodbye. Yeah.
Well, that's great because I kind of made some comparisons. I think Glenn Gilbo wrote an article. Mm-hmm. You and Drew Brees shared a lot in common in the fact that I think you both stayed the same amount of time at both of your places. You both won a championship, won it all. You both had some bad luck.
We did it in the same year, too, by the way.
That's right. That's right. There's that famous picture of you and Sean Payton at a Mardi Gras something where you're...
I had my own float, and he had his own float in the parade, the Orpheus parade.
And then Brees in his final year, he's playing in an empty Superdome and doesn't really get the send-off that he deserved. And I think by the end of your year last year, crowds were starting to come back. I think you hit like 7,000 against Alabama or something, but you didn't really get the send-off. Yeah. So they brought him back to do Who Dat Chancel to bring you back to throw out the first pitch, right?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm appreciative that they've asked me to do that, you know, and it's kind of symbolic, I guess, of, you know, I think Jay's going to catch the pitch, so it's kind of like me passing the torch to him, and I think he's going to do a wonderful job. I really like him. I've tried to help him and support him in every way that I can. My wife Karen had his wife Maureen over for lunch the other day, so you know, we're gonna do nothing but root for the best for LSU baseball from this point forward. And you know, I'm going to miss it, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be jealous of him or not want to see him be successful. I want the program to continue on a ascending trail and do as well as they possibly can do. And I'm here to support him and support LSU and support the community of Baton Rouge in any possible way I can. This is my home.
Well, you've certainly left some very good players over there, the Trey Morgans, the Dylan Cruzes of the world. Great to see guys like Mikhail Hilliard still out there and Devin Fontenot. And
yeah, I've got a lot of former players that are still a part of it. I feel really good, Jacques, that you know, I felt like we really handed Jay an outstanding team. The returning players, I think we had a really great recruiting class. Obviously, he's added a few pieces to it, you know, with the transfer portal and a couple of other guys. So there's no reason why they can't have an outstanding ball club this year. And if they get the breaks, you know, they get to Omaha. You know, we won a regional last year, so I told Jay, to do better, you know, you got to not only win the regional, you got to win the super regional. So I'm becoming one of those very high expectation fans that we have, and hope that he'll get to Omaha. And if we get to Omaha, I'll certainly be there to support him and the team.
A lot of great emotional stuff, and I was going to even just, you know, 2017, that should not be downplayed. 2017 was a really fun summer around here. I remember going to I wasn't covering the team in person until I went to Omaha and jinxed you in the final two games against Florida. But I remember going to walk-ons and watching the games against Oregon State, and the place going bananas, and Zach Hess becoming a superstar, and all the great teams, and Kramer Roberts, and what a great story, right? Another transfer portal story, that this guy could have left and whatnot, stuck through it, and his mom thanks you for pushing him and making, you know, bringing the best out of him as well.
Well, you know, Kramer, Cole Freeman, Jared Poche, Alex Lang, Greg Dykman, you know, Josh Smith, all the kids from that team, that was a special group, Jacques. I'll bet you there's not a lot of people in town here that realize that year we won the SEC West, we won the SEC overall title, we won the SEC tournament, we won, of course, the regional, the super regional, and our bracket in Omaha. The only thing we didn't win was the last two games in the finals against Florida, and they were about as close a games as you could possibly have. We lose 4-3 the first night. It's a bullpen game for us because of the injury to Eric Walker and us having to fight out of the losers bracket. We're going to piece it together, and they're pitching Brady Singer, who just went in the first round and is pitching in the major leagues now, and we almost win the game. If not, you know, if an umpire's call had gone the other way late in the game, who knows, it might have been even a different outcome. The next night, it's a 2-1 game in the 7th and 8th inning. We had first and third, nobody out in both the 7th and 8th innings and didn't score. One time we did score, but because of a slide at second base, they brought the tying run out of the dugout and stuck him back at third base. That's how close we were to winning it all. That team was terrific. That was a great ball club. And I enjoyed every moment with that team. That was a super group of kids. And it's a shame that they don't get their due in the history of LSU baseball just because they didn't win at the very end. It was an outstanding team. They won every other championship they could win.
Yeah, and if you win that, is 2 national championships, the modern day version of 5. It's debatable, you know. It's much harder to win today than it was back in the 80s and the 90s and whatnot. A couple more things with you. You know, Kim Mulkey used to, you know, go to the games, and of course it became the big joke. Oh, when's the cutaway of Kim Mulkey coming from the television? There she is. Okay, Kramer's mom. All those years, you know, it was kind of a joke. Oh, it'd be great if you coached the LSU women's team, but nobody couldn't dream it would happen, right?
Yeah.
Why would she leave Baylor?
Yeah.
And she's here, and you see the immediate impact she's making. I just love going to press conferences and listening to her talk and stick up for women and all the things that she's brought to the table. Have you enjoyed seeing her?
Kim is amazing. Well, you know, I mean, it was an unusual situation because she was the mother of a player, and typically, you know, I don't talk to the parents during the season, you know, about their son's playing time or anything like that. But she was also a very successful coach. I always enjoyed my relationship with Kim. Kim was, you know, you know her, she's always honest, she's going to be very blunt. I was that way with her. I consider us good friends, and having coached her son was a you know, it enriched my life. She gives credit to me about helping make him a man, but believe me, Kramer was a wonderful human being, and I loved coaching him. And you know, watching what she's doing with the women's basketball team has been a real joy for me. I watch every game. You know, I'm going to tonight's game with Kramer. We're taping this before the game tonight against Georgia, but I'm going to the game tonight with Kramer to watch the game. But I've watched almost every game and text message with her very frequently. Just very happy for her. She's a born winner, obviously. She knows nothing but winning and success. She's a great coach and a great mentor of people.
LSU football has gone the Notre Dame route like they did with you many years back.
Yeah.
What is your knowledge of Brian Kelly?
Well, obviously I'm rooting like crazy for him. You know, it's ironic. I was 12 years at Notre Dame and he was 12 years at Notre Dame, but we did have a 3-year gap between us. So we didn't really know each other there. He didn't come until I was already here at LSU. He didn't go to South Bend until I was already here at LSU. But I've had a couple of interactions with him since he's been here in Baton Rouge. I think he is going to really enjoy coaching here. He's going to get out there and get after it, and hopefully he's going to take us back to the top. You know, he's certainly going to work at it. He brought Brian Polian with him to coach his special teams and head up recruiting. I know Brian very well. He's an excellent coach, a great person. It's going to be exciting, you know, and it is kind of ironic, you know, that I came from Notre Dame and he came from Notre Dame, and I hope the majority of the fans out there feel that it worked out pretty well with the baseball program, and hopefully, you know, that the new football coach will do as well.
And Beth Torina, you know, she had spoken so highly of you and the relationship you two guys had, and talking about the game and whatnot.
Yeah, I love Beth Torina. I think Beth Torina is one of the outstanding coaches in all of college softball. Probably hasn't gotten enough credit for what she's done here, taking the team to Oklahoma City every year, being right there in the fight in the regionals and the super regionals. I just think she's a tremendous coach. You know, I had lunch with her the other day and loved talking about her team and giving her little tidbits of experiences that I've had. She's always made me feel like I've been able to give her some good advice, and I just love my relationship with her. You know, most of the coaches at LSU. The other day I was out at with the women's golf team, talking to Garrett Runyon and Alexis Rather, and talking about all their players, and then talking about experiences. And these are things that I really didn't have time to do before. Sure. And now I get the time to go see other coaches. You know, I spend time with Chuck Winstead. I spend time with the, you know, coaches of other sports, and I'm looking forward to continuing to be a big LSU fan now.
Well, I appreciate your time. I just want everyone to know this guy never changed his phone number. He's got the same phone number you had when you first got here. You made every charity event that you could make, whether it was driving to Karen Crow, Louisiana, and getting a speeding ticket for something called Red, Rock and Blue. We started back in 2009.
I remember that very well.
Came over. And if you could be at an event, you could be there. I saw you at so many things over the years, and you always returned a phone call, and you would apologize for missing a phone call. Sorry, I missed you. You know, so from a media standpoint, we couldn't have asked for a better coach to cover, and we appreciate you having us today.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with you. It's good to talk about LSU baseball and LSU sports, and I always appreciated our relationship. And thought it was first class in both directions.
We won't be coming back during the year to ask Coach Mainieri, well, wouldn't you have done this differently or that differently? We're not going to do that.
I won't give you an answer on that one. I'm going to be 100% supportive of Jay. So anybody that's out there ever sees me, don't start bad-mouthing the coach to me, because I'll be defending him.
It's the way presidents are supposed to be, right? They'll talk about the new president when he comes in and whatnot. So this was great. Thank you so much.
All right, Jack.